y'all. Today we're going to be talking about communication theories. This is probably one of my favorite lectures, so I'm a little disappointed to be doing it over slideshows, so bear with me. We're going to be talking about two main things. Number one, why study public speaking? It's a required class in California, but why should we bother? And finally, models of communication. So let's start with understanding the importance of public speaking.
Well, the crops are growing very well, and they're organic, and some of them have pesticides, and I think that we should make a perfect pesticide for the crops that is good for people and healthy and keeps the crops preserved too, because we need the food because it's food and stuff, and organic food is good also. And the businesses downtown really need to lower their rent, because if the rent was lowered, those people would really have their own businesses. They have enough stuff. They're very good at making things. They're like experts. They're really good. And we can really be a community and make the things and sell them in our stores. And I really believe that it can be a California thing, that it can really work out, because we can be rich in cotton and mining metals and silkworms, and we can make things, cars. The machine can make it for us, and we can have the community and the city in San Francisco, and we can make things and put them in the store. On the East Coast, they have slaves, and they believe in slavery and made in China, but on the West Coast, the new West Coast, we don't believe in that. We believe in the union, and that's what we are. As in the Bush administration, which is really good, he has government funding for small business owners. You can grow every kind of fruit and vegetable you want. That's how they do it. They have fruit trees and vegetable trees. That's where fruit and vegetable comes from. You freeze the fruit and vegetables, it'll last forever. You can put, broccoli or strawberries in the freezer. It'll last forever. If you don't, it might go bad in a while, but people, we live in California. This is our home. This is where we live. Growing food is so good for the people because it's free. All you have to do is pay the farmers and pay for the land. But why do we have to pay for the land? The land's free. It's new land, do we have to pay for the land? Do we have to pay rent? Do we have to pay? The food's free, so we should just sell it at the farmer's market.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next speaker.
I have no idea if that person had a coherent idea or not. But that's what happens when you go in front of an audience not prepared, under-researched, and suffering from extreme communication apprehension. In this class, I'm going to give you the tools not to emulate them. This class is required at all California colleges, but why? Oral communication skills were the #1 skills that college graduates found useful in the business world. It can help develop critical thinking skills, which is defined as the intellectual discipline process of actively and skillfully conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, and/or evaluating information gathered from or generated by observation, experience, reflection, reasonings, or communication as a guide to belief and action. It can help fine-tune verbal and nonverbal skills. Often people do not know exactly how they present themselves when speaking in public. The feedback in this class will help you fine-tune your communication skills so you don't end up like Talladega Nights wondering, where do I put my hands? Very few leadership roles in this country do not expect you to stand in front of your subordinates, customers, or colleagues and explain a policy or congratulate them on a job well done. This is a leadership class. It will help you find comfort in researching a topic and presenting it in an organized, articulate fashion. And finally, the more you do public speaking, the less you're going to get scared of it. In 2013, Google decided to test its hiring hypothesis by crunching every bit and byte of hiring, firing, and promotion data accumulated since the company's incorporation in 1998. These were its conclusions. Project Oxygen shocked everyone by concluding that among the most important qualities of Google's top employees, STEM expertise comes in dead last. The 7 top characteristics of success at Google are all quote unquote soft skills: being a good coach, communicating and listening well, possessing insight into others, including others who have different values and points of view, having empathy towards and being supportive of one's colleagues, being a good critical thinker and problem solver, and being able to make connections across complex ideas.
But the park is still flooded, so you'll see kids out there again.
Some of those kids today will be my co-hosts.
It's just like, dude, you get the best barrels ever, dude. You just like, you pull in, you just get spit right out of them. You just drop in and just smack the lip, you drop down, snap, and then after that, you just drop in, ride the barrel and get pitted. You're so pitted like that.
Well, actually, you know what?
Good communication means being understood. I finally was told what pitted means. I don't think I can repeat it. So let's get started into our introduction to communication theory. We're going to talk about 3 different models of communication. The first one is the linear model of communication, which was created by Claude Shannon and Warren Weaver for Bell Laboratories. And it's a very simple communication model, imagining that the source or speaker emits a message through a channel such as verbal communication, radio, television, or text messages, and it's absorbed by the receiver. I find that the best way to imagine this model of communication is maybe if you left somebody a note. In that the communication, there is an interaction from that other person. However, it doesn't really take the receiver into consideration. It makes me think of television. How many of us just put on the television for background noise? Sure, a message is being sent to us by the source, but how many of us are actually receiving it? Sorry. To better understand the receiver, the interaction model gradually took on more favor. This model explores a more extensive communication model. The speaker, in this case, the yellow shirt, creates a message by encoding a message. What I mean by encoding is we have an idea all the way back in our head, and right now I'm actually encoding it into English to get it across to you all. But while sending it out, I have noise that I have to overcome. It might be physical noise. It might be a headache. It might be something that's preventing me from getting that message across. And then it goes across the channel. The channel in this case is verbal, but maybe it might be text messages. And then when it gets to the receiver, it still has to get through noise, because just because we got across my noise doesn't mean we're going to get across their noise. In this case, the gray shirt. They need to fight through that noise as well before they decode it from English or from American Sign Language or from a different language like Spanish or Farsi, and repeats the cycle by sending the message feedback. But even this didn't tell the whole communication model. Instead, it kind of reminds me of a text message, right? When I'm typing something on my phone, I am encoding it into English. I have to get across noise. What if I'm in a bad area and there's no signal right then? That would be considered noise. The channel itself is actually the signal from my cell phone to whose ever cell phone I'm sending it to. If they're in a bad area, maybe they're in a fight with their significant other, they can't pick up my text message right then. When it finally gets across that noise, they have to look at it and decode it and then send back their own message. This brings us to the full model of the transactional model of communication. And this is the model that's still used today. The transactional model of communication was proposed by Dean Barland in 1970. The transactional model presumes that all individuals are simultaneously communicating by creating, interpreting, and negotiating shared meanings. According to the transactional model of communication, human communication is an inexact process because it's complex and symbolic. It's personal and transactional, and often unintentional. Messages always include both content and relationship dimensions. But let's take a moment to kind of break this down a little bit more. So, just as with our linear model of communication, we've got a primary sender. But this goes a little bit more than just sending information. They're saying that the primary sender, in this case me, is communicating while also decoding messages from the receiver. And the receiver, in this case you all are analyzing and simultaneously responding to the sender. This is a little harder to do online, obviously, but as you make comments, that's you responding to me. In a person-to-person interaction, this might be, the receiver might be simultaneously responding to me by opening their eyes, nodding, smiling, looking at their phone, yawning, the little quizzical look that we get when we're concerned, and the little wrinkle we get right above our nose. All of these things I would be decoding from you simultaneously as I'm speaking. So how do we decode those simultaneous messages? Well, we take the situation and context into account. So we've got place or location. Why would a place or location matter to how communication is interpreted? Do we talk the same way with our best friends than we do with our work boss or our parents? Do we use the same language at a sports arena while watching a game as we do in a church? Gosh, no, right? It includes, but it's not limited to, the relationships between the audience and the speaker. Difference between your employer and your professor and your best friend and your worst enemy. And then dictates elements such as appearance, language choices, and rhetoric. How does the way somebody look affect the way that we're going to receive their message or communicate with them? Are we more likely to treat someone dressed in a business suit different than jeans and a t-shirt? How about someone who speaks with a heavy accent, whether national accent or international? All of these contexts and situations give us tools that we have been taught our entire lives to decode the messages we receive. Then we've got different types of noise. So interference can be any element that disrupts the transmission line from the sender to the receiver. This interference will cause message misinterpretations. So there's literal type of interference, there's contextual interference, and there's symbolic interference. But let's break down some of this noise a little bit more. We've got things like semantic noise. Well, failure to understand the word. If I walk up to my mom and I say, "Hey, dog," she's going to look at me and says, "Oh, there's a dog? There's a puppy? Where's the dog? Where's the dog?" That would be her failure to understand my contextual use of the word dog in this case. Or if one person speaks Spanish and the other's English, there may be a failure to understand the word. Here's a great example.
CBS 2's Serene Branson is live at the Staples Center with highlights and backstage coverage we're seeing for the very first time. Serene.
Well, a very heavy rotation tonight. We had a very Darrison. But let's go hit Terrace Chases those for the bit. They have the pit.
Let's go hit Terrace Chases those for the bit. They have the pit.
And the Grammy.
So in this case, we're not understanding what she said. We're having semantic noise. As she has encoded her message, she sent it across, and we're like, what? But for her, it was actually a physiological noise. So although a lot of people were concerned that she was having a stroke at the time, it actually turns out she was suffering from a really bad migraine, which was actually impeding the encoding of her message properly into the language that she wanted. So in her case, it was a physical illness that was preventing her noise, her communication from getting across. There's psychological noise, anxiety, bias, emotion, rage. Rage is so easily to pinpoint. When you're mad, how much do you listen? There's intellectual noise. Every first day of class ever, I got intellectual overload. I'd go into my classes and the teacher would be like, "Hey, these are all the things that we have to do in the next 6, 12, 16 weeks, whatever it was." And I just felt completely overwhelmed to the point where I actually shut down. You can also do information underload when you walk into a test and you're woefully unprepared and everything just starts to not make sense anymore. Even the top where it says name and you're like, I don't know what to put there. What do I put there? That's information underload. And then we've got my dog, who's giving us a very good example of environmental noise. It would be physical commotion, cars honking, garbage rotting, signal dropping. All of these would be environmental noise. These simultaneous messages flowing from the receiver back to the primary sender includes nonverbal and verbal responses. We usually talk about them as feedback. So as I'm looking at this feedback, I'm going to adjust my style and then continue with my message. Y'all are probably at this point getting annoyed with my stupid jokes. Well, okay, I'm going to start lessening in on them. Or you all think it's funny, I'm going to start giving you more. Here are some great examples of feedback, nonverbal feedback. We got Stanley in the upper left corner, kind of giving a, you gotta be kidding me, and Emma Stone in the bottom right, just saying happy. Now, there is no absolute answers for these, so why don't you all comment below in the discussion forum and tell me what some of the other feedback examples are. So we talked about today that transactional model of communication is a symbolic, personal, simultaneous transactional process. It's influenced by location, work or church, by history, how well do you know that person, cultural and social relationships. Interference can create misinterpretations, and the feedback from the receiver affects the primary sender, who adjusts the message as needed. So I've got a question that you can comment in our discussion page. If our language and communication style is created based on the context and situation we're in, can our situation be changed by our language? Why or why not? And can we ever not communicate? Go to the discussion page and make sure that you comment on these questions, and feel free to comment on others as well. So we talked about why we should study public speaking. We talked about the linear model of communication, which was like a television. It just sends signals and maybe we're receiving it, maybe we're not. We talked about the interactional model of communication, which is more like a text message. And finally, the transactional model of communication. On Monday, we're going to be meeting at the Newark campus in NP4. Don't be late or be prepared to read us a poem. And bring an item to speak for about a minute.